Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to a special show with a special guest who is a Uyghur Muslim who is an activist who's been very active on media, mainstream media, BBC. Is it called TNT or TRT? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Turkish channel, right? Al
Yes.
Jazeera and many other important channels. He's obviously got very important information to give us today about the plight of the Uyghur Muslims in East Turkmenistan. So before we get started with what's happening on the ground now, I thought we'd potentially better get started with maybe a brief history of who are the Uyghur people and what is the history of those Uyghur people in the East Turkmenistan.
Sure. Today, what the Chinese call, or what it's officially called by the world bodies as the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, we often refer to as Chinese-occupied East Turkestan. And I mean, you could go into thousands of years of history, but mainly the Uyghurs come into play, especially during the Karahan Empire period, where the Uyghurs in 934 accept Islam, and they are the first Turkic nation to accept Islam and make a kingdom out of it. They make the first kingdom. And even the word Uyghur in Turkish, Uyghur, actually means civilized, because they were the first, because generally Turkic/Mongol people are nomadic people, and the Uyghurs were the first branch of Turks to leave that nomadic lifestyle and create a civilization and agriculture. And so around 900 they accept Islam. Then it's like a few hundred years of within a Uyghur kingdom of different sort of kingdoms within Turkic kingdoms. It's not until we get to about 1760 where we start having issues with the Chinese Empire. And during that time, we get into contact, the Uyghurs get into contact with the Manchu Empire, and they take over what we now refer to as East Turkestan in 1760. They sort of rule that part of the land, and we'll get into the geography as well, for about 80 or so years. During those 80 years, there are many revolts, and in about 1864, the Uyghurs become independent once more from the Manchu Empire. And then during that period, for a very brief period, the Uyghurs actually give bay'ah to the Ottoman Empire as well, very briefly. But again, it's short-lived, and we are taken over by the Manchurians again in 1876. Then for about 8 years or so, there's a bit more revolt, and then the Qing dynasty, basically, during that period, in 1884, we are labeled as Xinjiang, which literally means new frontier or new land. And then it's not until 1911 that the Manchu Empire totally is wiped out by the Chinese nationalists, and we fall under Chinese nationalist rule. And then from 1911 to about 1933, we fight the Chinese nationalists, and we establish the East Turkestan Islamic Republic. And this was established in the city of Kashgar, which is very close to which borders with Afghanistan. And it's actually recognized by the Afghan government back then, and also Turkey, the Turkish Republic. But unfortunately, this Islamic Republic is short-lived. And then we lose the fight to the Chinese nationalists once more. And then in about 11 years later, in 1944, towards the north of East Turkestan, in the city of Gulja, we established the East Turkestan Republic. And that goes on for about 5 or 6 years until the Chinese communists disband that government in 1949. And then we've been living for the past 70 odd years under communist rule, Chinese communist rule, together with Tibet, together with Inner Mongolia. And since that day, they promised us autonomy. Technically, we are labeled the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, but we don't receive any autonomy. Our leaders are puppets, and we've gone through many oppressions throughout the times, whether it be our own Arabic script